Well, good morning, Second Baptist family. Hope you had a great weekend. We did. So excited about our family coming in, and even more excited when they left. So I'm wore out. I'm going to get a good nap this afternoon because we've had a 5-year-old in our house. It's been a minute since we had a 5-year-old. They don't sleep very much, but they're exciting for about 10, 15 minutes. Then Pops needs a little time. We're going to be in 1 Timothy chapter 6 for a few minutes today. I was thinking about 40 years ago, I graduated from college. It's 1986, had a business degree, BBA. So I knew better, but I made a stupid mistake. Went to seminary, grad school for preachers, and was single at the time. And this wonderful new technology came out that I just could not wait to have. Problem is I didn't have any money. Most seminary students didn't have any money. But for only $10 a month, if I got a Montgomery Ward's credit card, I could get a VCR and watch movies in my home. Now, if that doesn't age me, nothing ages me, right? I mean, that was just as too great a temptation. So I fell for it. I got the credit card. I got the VCR. Problem is, in 1986, the interest rates were at a minimum 18%. So I paid for that VCR at least twice before it was paid off, thus starting what would be a normal cycle of debt, normal for Americans, because that's how we roll. 90% of Americans admit to buying things they can't afford. Keyword admit, because that means the other 10% are lying about it. 9 out of 10 admit it. 10% say they spend more than they make. I think that's kind of low. 92% said that of their disposable income, the average American is spent on debt payments. And that was definitely the case for me. As I was independent for the first time, I told my parents, thanks for getting me from kindergarten through college. I got it from here. I had no idea what I was talking about. I had no idea how many bills that they were paying. And man, was I broke. I'd never been more broke in my life, yet I needed a VCR. At least I told myself that. And that was, I would come to realize was a trap. It was a trap. A trap that someone in that first year at seminary talked some sense into me about whether I get on this side or that side of compound interest, whether I would be someone who pays debt or someone who saves. And it was a big decision because I would be married and a pastor within a year. And so my wife and I had a conversation. I said, I think that what I just did with this VCR needs to be the last time I don't live within my means. I'd like to have a marriage where we can, instead of digging a big hole of debt like the rest of America, just live within our means and save some for later. She said, I'm in. So 1986 was the very last time I paid a penny of credit card interest, because Janet and I got on the same page. Now, you may be in like, whoa, I wish I'd have known that 10, 15, 20 years ago. Or maybe one of you is on that page, and then if you're married, you're dating, you're on a different page. I just created an argument for you this afternoon, so you're welcome. All I can say to you is just, hey, go for it. Don't avoid that conversation, because it'll save you a lot of pain down the road. If you listen to what God's word says about it. And it says a lot about it. This is a in-between series sermon. David did not ask me to preach on money. I just knew that this is that time when there's a long line of people wanting to buy stuff we don't need with money we don't have. There's another line of people that want us to give to their ministries, and that's not going to get any better in the next 6 weeks. So hopefully I can save you from some pain like that Guidestone did me back in 1986. 1 Timothy 6, verse 9, laid out here in the CSB. It says, Paul says to his son in the faith, the young man he's mentoring, he says, those who want to be rich fall into temptation, a trap, and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge people into ruin and destruction. Verse 10, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and by craving it, some have wandered away from the faith. So this is very much a spiritual discussion, and pierced themselves with many griefs. So hopefully I can spare you some grief instead of create more. This is a grace zone, not a guilt zone. So if you are upside down in this area, just know that you can start today making better decisions that honor the Lord and set your family up for success. So all stewardship issues are discipleship issues, all are spiritual decisions, every spending decision. So there's 4 traps here. I stepped into the first one right out of college. The first trap I want to share with you is spending money like a child. Spending money like a child. Basically, children want what they want when they want it. If you let them alone in a store, they're just going to grab stuff and start eating it, right? Depending on their age. Which is why I don't go into grocery stores. Janet doesn't let me go into Kroger, Walmart, or anything, because there's an 8-year-old in me, and everything I want to buy in there is not good for me. And it's just, I had a problem until I didn't. I got a boundary there because she doesn't need my help getting groceries. Spending money like a child looks like basically convincing yourself that you need things that you don't. Proverbs 21:20 says it this way, stupid people spend money as fast as they can get it. And you're like, oh man, I wish I'd heard this yesterday. Because I'm getting all this Black Friday stuff too. And the algorithms know exactly what I need. Getting all kinds of opportunities to buy hunting equipment. And Janet started a rumor in my home that I have enough already. And she's right. Every marriage probably needs a spender and a saver, by the way. This tension is a good thing. If you have a house with 2 spenders, you'll always be broke. If you have a house with 2 savers, you'll always be bored. You'll not do anything fun. You really need both. And that's going to create some conflict. But the real root of this trap is covetousness, which is the 10th commandment. It's probably the one that's overlooked the most. Do not covet your neighbor's house. This is Exodus 20. The last commandment, do not covet your neighbor's house, and use some other examples of what not to covet. And then it finishes with do not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. Now that was hard back then, the days of Moses. And he did not have algorithms. He did not have Instagram and Facebook and all the things that are like, man, they're showing me stuff I didn't even know was available. I didn't even know I wanted this stuff. And now it's constantly on my feed. The word covet means desire. And it doesn't mean that liking things is bad. That's actually normal. It means that there's an inordinate desire, passion to buy things, to get things that don't belong to us or that we can't afford or don't need. And so this is where a lot of people end up in the debt cycle. It's because of impulse buying. And this is a great time to hear this word. The antidote to covetousness is contentment. And that's something that God can give. Matthew 6:24 says, no one can serve 2 masters. He'll either hate the one, love the other, or he'll be devoted to one and despise the other, because you cannot serve both God and money. So how do you get contentment? If that's the antidote to covetousness, Paul said in Philippians 4:11, I've learned to be content. This was something I learned over time, same with me, in whatever circumstances I was in. Now, circumstances back in 1984, I didn't have any money. I had enough to pay rent, had to spread out the rest for food. I didn't even have enough for insurance, but the circumstances around me is that determined what I could afford, what I could not afford. And as opportunities continue, getting more money doesn't necessarily scratch the itch of contentment. That contentment comes from the Lord. being okay with not having everything, that's something that you can't just muster up by yourself. But God sees that our toys can sometimes become idols, and our toys can become traps. And when they become traps, we get upside down and we get into a cycle that not only hurts us, but it hurts our family later on. So, trap number one, spending money like a child, which means impulse buying. Trap number two, spending money like you're single. Now, some of you are like, I'm single, so I'm spending money like I'm single. Well, don't, unless you're certain you're never going to be married. If you don't want to ever get married, then ignore the next 7 minutes of the sermon. But if you ever plan on getting married, know that your spending decision affects your spouse, affects your kids, and affects your grandkids. Guys, you know this already. But I'll pull you aside here, man to man. You probably know this, but your wife's going to outlive you, most likely, right? If you're the same age, they generally live, on average, 6 years longer than we do. So, this is not about you, about them. If you don't set her up for success, then you're setting her and your kids up for failure later on. So if you don't have a plan, I don't care if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, have a plan, or later on you'll be like, oh no. You don't wait till your 40s or 50s to get a plan, a spending plan and a savings plan. There's a jillion of them online. I'm not selling anything today. In fact, I'm not even getting paid. I told them the only condition I have for I'll preach all you want, either campus, just don't try to pay me. The same with all the churches in Arkansas that I get to steward, the 1,500, almost 1,500 churches, said I'll come to your church, big or small, just don't try to pay me. And that's because somebody helped me when I was 22 to get on this side of compound interest instead of that side of compound interest, because somebody's paying interest, right? You're either going to get paid or you're going to pay somebody else. And the fact is, our grandparents were right. Our grandparents or great-grandparents, they bought houses they could afford, they bought cars they could afford, they bought clothes they could afford, and if they couldn't afford it, they'd save up for it later. And that was the norm. That was the norm. And then access to credit became more and more available in the 50s and 60s. And when I was a college student in the 80s, somebody had to co-sign for me to get a credit card. Now they're just giving them away like credit. And so, unfortunately, older teens are now getting credit cards and getting in this cycle of debt before they even realize what's going on. Spending money like you're single means not thinking about the people around you. Proverbs 21:17 says, the one who loves pleasure will become a poor man. It doesn't say those who like pleasure. Good grief, we all like pleasure, right? It says love pleasure. It doesn't say the like of money is the root of evil. It's the love. It's when it becomes an idol, a god, and compulsory, you're getting what you want right when you want it and not able to say no to the most important and difficult person you will ever lead, which is yourself. So it starts with saying no to yourself on behalf of your position as a child of God, but also as a position of someone who might be or is currently married. Is that you entered into a covenant where your money became our money. Janet and I, we've never had separate accounts. And we've always been on the same page. Now, we didn't always get on the same page overnight, especially prior to hunting season. We've had some discussions. Yeah, those awkward laughs, I hear you. Haven't you been there? Like right before hunting season, well, deer camp dues and this and that, they're coming up. And if I hadn't saved up, then it's going to be a long conversation. Proverbs 20:25 says, it's a trap for anyone to dedicate something rashly and later to reconsider his vows. And that was written before Amazon. I mean, it's a trap to dedicate something rashly. I'm going to be tempted to do that today, And, if the Cowboys keep winning, I'm going to have to keep getting Cowboy stuff, right? It's just, it's just part of it, as if I don't have enough already. But when you're married, you set for yourself spending limits. You set for yourself goals. How do you want life to look like later on? Because that's what that guy, when I was 22, said, before I was married, before I pastored a church. He said, what do you want your life to look like later? I'm like, later? I can't even see 25 from here, much less, now I'm 60. But because I listened to him and had a savings plan and a spending plan, then we don't have any debt. Just because I listened to that guy, which means we drove cars a long time. I mean a long, long, long time. Drove old cars. We wore clothes a long time. We did a lot of things. We learned to say no to ourselves and no to each other. And it's a choice. It's a choice. Spending money like you're married as opposed to spending money like you're single. Spending money like an adult instead of spending money like a child. The third trap is spending money like there's no tomorrow. Spending money like there's no tomorrow. In other words, not considering what tomorrow might look like, because we can't know, right? We don't know if we're going to have a physical problem, one of us or one of our kids. We don't know if there's going to be a catastrophe. We don't know what the stock market's going to do. We can't predict those kind of things. We just prepare the best we can. And I'm not one that typically is wired to fear. It's not natural for me. First of all, first 15 years of my life, what kid fears anything? Anybody from 15 and below is not worried about war. They're not worried about the economy. They may be concerned, but they're sleeping just fine. I was 15 when I became a follower of Jesus in Mount Ida, Arkansas. And so right at the tender age of 15, Jesus took away the sting of death, the penalty of death. My name was written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Jesus did for me what I can't do for myself. He saved me. So therein, whatever fear of death I might have had was taken away. There's no reason any believer needs to be afraid to die. Amen? So for 60 years, I have not been afraid of death until 2 weeks ago. In a conversation with my wife, she said, I've been paying this life insurance bill for years. Did you know we had a life insurance bill on top of the one that we already have in your job? I said, no. And then she told me how much it was for. And all of a sudden, I was afraid to go to sleep at night. The more I thought about it, the more I thought, So right before we went to bed, I said, so let me get this straight. If I die in my sleep tonight, you wake up a wealthy woman. But if you die in your sleep, all I get's a stinking dog, right? She said, that's right. That's right, that about covers it. And so I slept in the other room. So I was over-prepared, for the next thing. And if you don't look at whatever your spending decisions are, whether it's debt or insurance or retirement or whatever, from the vantage point of someone who's setting up your family, then revisit it as a very unselfish way to prepare not just for your life, but for others as well. So have a plan. You know that the last conversation Paul had with Timothy, his son, he called his son in the faith. In Acts chapter 20, a very intimate conversation where 3 times it says that Timothy and the other pastors, the other elders in the church in Ephesus that Paul had previously been pastoring. So it's like me meeting with the staff of Second Baptist Church and saying, I'll never see you again. And he gives them some sage advice. He said, I'm going to finish the race that God's called me to do. I'm never going to see you again. It's an awkward, guys, preachers crying and hugging and all this weird stuff. And anyway, so the last thing that comes out of Paul's mouth before he gets on the ship, never to see him again, the last 4 verses of Acts 20 basically say this: have a financial plan. Of all the things you're going to tell these young preachers is to have a financial plan and go out as a giver, not as a taker. Here's what he said. Acts 20:33, I've not coveted anyone's silver or gold or clothing. So covetousness, you see that call out as the root. For you yourselves know I worked with my own hands to support myself and those who are with me. In every way I've shown you, I've discipled you. It's necessary to help the weak by laboring like this and to remember the words of the Lord Jesus, because he says more blessed to give than to receive. That's practical advice for all of us. Probably do more good after my funeral, because I not only set my wife up, but also you're either going to give a certain amount of what you have to the government, or you're going to give it to a charity. Ours is going to be to support missionaries, like we're supporting these international missionaries. We got 3,500 international Southern Baptist missionaries and another 3,500 North American missionaries. Part of our estate, when we die, is going to go to Second Baptist Church. We've not been a member of a church longer than we've been here. Plus, you steward your resources well. So we believe in storehouse tithing. We did when I was pastor. We do now. I'm not the pastor here. I mean, that's just how we've rolled. And the fact is, I don't know what tomorrow looks like or how long we've got, but what Paul's saying to Timothy, what I'm trying to say to you, is to get a plan, and if you don't know how, just ask somebody. But please don't take advice from broke people, all right? Don't just ask anybody. Ask people with a proven track record. I have a financial advisor, I always have. My financial advisor has a financial advisor. My doctor has a doctor. I mean, everybody needs somebody to help them. So you don't have to be an expert in this stuff. Just be humble enough to ask for help. I did not grow up with a role model on financial literacy or advocacy. I learned that later as an adult. And Janet and I just looked it up. We bought a book, Larry Burkett book, The Envelope Plan. Some of you might remember that. Old school, like you put money, grocery money in this envelope. I mean, it's like we didn't just have a dream. We had a plan. And we worked it together. So don't fall for the trap to spending money like there's no tomorrow, because tomorrow is coming. And then the final trap is spending money like it's yours. I was in our men's Bible study in the room behind me here. I don't know, last Wednesday or Wednesday before, they were talking about stewardship in that meeting and ownership. One of the verses that was shared was Psalm 24:1, the earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. The same author, David, in the context of a love offering, preparing for a building project, said in 1 Chronicles 29:14, he said, but who am I and who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? For everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. So bottom line is that God owns everything, and God owns everybody. And that makes us stewards of what God owns. And a stewardship mindset is different than an ownership mindset. If you think of your possessions as yours, talk about my house, that's appropriate, but look on the deed. Do you own it or does the bank own it? Right? Your truck, your car, your kids. Those belong to the Lord. Hopefully you dedicated those in this room, right? This has never been my church. This is the hero of this church is Jesus. And so in the stewardship mindset, you spend money like it's not yours because it's not yours, right? At least that's what the Bible teaches. And so when we come as stewards, there's some things that we don't have to pray about, which really simplifies my life, because there's so many other things I can pray about that I need to pray about. Pray for wisdom, pray for discernment. I don't have to pray about giving. God's already told me how to do it. So I don't have to waste time figuring out a better plan. So the simple plan in the Old Testament and in the New Testament is called tithing. Tithing means 10. That's all it has ever meant. It's 10%. It doesn't mean 9%, 11%. You can give above the tithe in an offering. We do. But when I became a child of God in Mount Ida, Arkansas, at 15 years of age, I gave my heart, soul, life, my body, everything to Jesus. And I started tithing then. So whatever I got, which wasn't much, give him 10%. The more I got, still gave 10% or more. The fact is, we wouldn't be in this room if there weren't tithers at Second Baptist Church. So I want to just pause for a second to say thank you to those in here who've been giving faithfully for not just years, but some of you for decades. We would not be packing in 400 college students on Wednesday nights in this room if you hadn't had the faith and also the obedience to give. We wouldn't have gotten as far as we've gotten if it weren't for the faithfulness of people like you. And as long as I was here, I never looked at who gave what. I didn't really want to be burdened with that information. I wanted to give the same hugs to everybody. So I'm not calling anybody out, except I'm calling out the faithful. You know who you are. And I just want to say, as your former pastor and as a member of this church, thank you. When we moved to Conway, I got to be honest, we didn't pray about what church that we wanted to belong to. We were already part of this family. We just took a 10-year sabbatical to do ministry elsewhere. And we came home. We did not pray about whether to give a tithe because storehouse tithing is taught. I was teaching at one seminary last year, and one of the seminary professors he had a section that he taught. He said something that was ridiculous. He said, the New Testament doesn't teach tithing. So, that's an Old Testament thing. And man, my blood pressure started to go up. My face started to get red. Fortunately, I wasn't on stage at the time. And I was going to speak again later that afternoon. I got up and I said, well, you've heard today that, because these are seminary students. They're impressionable. And it was an event that I'd organized. And I just said, listen, fact is, the Bible does teach in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Jesus not only commended tithing once, he commended tithing twice. And in a rare commendation to the Pharisees, he said in Matthew 23:23 and Luke 11:43 that tithing is a good thing. And so we've had ours for, I don't know, as long as it's been available to have it taken out of our account automatically, we've done that. So I don't know, 20, 30 years. You can bring it in an envelope. If you can bring it in gold coins, Cougarans, if you remember those. However you want to give, I don't really care. And this doesn't benefit me at all, personally. I'm just telling you, this is the plan, and God's been faithful. So he basically, early in life, live within your means, save for tomorrow, invest in the kingdom, and trust God. You do that, you'll be fine. You come up with your own plan, then the results could vary quite a bit. So are you spending money like a child, or like you're single, or like an unbeliever who doesn't think about tomorrow? If so, this is a great day to start over. This is a great day to spend money, not like an owner, but like a steward. Not like a slave, but like a son or a daughter who doesn't really come up with the rules, doesn't really come up with the resources, just says, thank you, God, for providing. Let me be a good steward of what you have entrusted to me. And then I'm going to just be obedient and trust you for the rest.